Today is Wednesday, May 21st, 2025. This is Quick Start from CBN News. I'm Dan Andros. A Christian summer camp in Colorado suing over a gender policy that could shut it down. We'll have that top story and more on today's podcast, where we bring you news from a Christian perspective. Subscribe, leave a rating right there on your podcast platform of choice. You just got to click the little star, write a little comment, whatever you want to do. Just get a rating in there. That helps us out a lot. We'd appreciate that. You can also email us, quickstartpodcast@cbn.org, right to our inbox. We're getting through the news of the Cray together like we do each and every weekday, bright and early. And joining me today, CBN's Billy Hallowell and Trey Goins-Phillips. And on the focus story, Billy, we're going to talk about the one I just mentioned there at the top, this Christian summer camp and a big lawsuit.
Yeah, this is a crazy one out in Colorado. This long-standing Christian camp is taking action, and they're not willing to back down over the gender issue, so we'll break that story down today.
All right, that's coming up on the focus story in just a minute. On the main thing, CBN's Raj Nair talked to Sharik Khan, a really interesting testimony of leaving Islam to follow Christ, so we'll have a bit of that conversation coming up on the main thing. All right, make sure you subscribe to all of our CBN News podcasts, including Billy's Newsmakers podcast. Full-length interviews each and every weekday. Make sure you're checking that out. Also, CBN's Abigail Robertson, Heaven Meets Earth. The links are both there in the description of this podcast episode. All right, and with that, we are going to head to the news in 90 seconds. 6 dangerous inmates are still on the run after a stunning jail escape in New Orleans that authorities now say was an inside job. The breakout happened just after midnight last Friday. 10 inmates slipped through a hole carved behind a jail toilet, scaled a fence, and sprinted across Interstate 10, all while no one noticed for nearly 8 hours. Now a sheriff's office employee, his 33-year-old Sterling Williams, has been arrested, accused of helping plan the escape after being threatened by one of the inmates. He claimed they said they would shank him if he didn't help, and so he ended up not reporting them and helping them escape. 4 of the escapees have since been caught, but 6 remain at large, and all are considered armed and dangerous, facing serious charges, including murder, aggravated assault, and false imprisonment. And the death toll stands at 19 after deadly tornadoes tore through Kentucky late last week, with the hardest hit area being the city of London and Laurel County. Now, as communities begin the painful process of recovery, a new round of severe weather threatens to strike the same region, as officials are warning of more damaging winds and possibly more tornadoes. Operation Blessing teams are boots on the ground, delivering hot meals, supplies, and hope to families who've lost everything. If you'd like to support those relief efforts, you can visit www.ob.org. Those are just some of today's top headlines. Check out more over at cbnnews.com. Guys, this inmate story, I don't know if you've seen this escape. I don't know if you've seen the video. You can see them running out. They also tried to taunt the officials at the prison when they left. They wrote "too easy," but they spelt it Toeasy, which I thought was kind of amusing, but not amusing the fact that these guys escaped. And I don't know, you look at a story like this and it's just I have so many thoughts, including how in the world does this happen? But it looks like the moment of truth was this guy, this worker who was threatened. And I'm not saying it would be easy, but he didn't do the right thing. Once that happened, he needs to go and report that. And if they got to transfer him, but sometimes doing the right thing comes with a cost, and doing the wrong thing then also comes with a cost later. So now he's facing the consequences for that.
I just don't know how you assume. It's not like, oh, my hangnail fell off. It's like there are human beings who've escaped a prison. They're going to find out. People are going to know that these people have left the building.
Right.
I don't get what the end game was there.
Well, I have to admit, I was today years old when I found out about this story, and every detail that you shared made it even more alarming and bizarre, this whole story. It reminds me, there's a show on, which I'm not recommending it, I've actually watched it, but there's a show on Peacock called The Hunting Party that is basically this. And I thought that you were just kind of describing a show. But this is actually happening in real life right now.
That's why it was so fascinating. I saw the video. I'm like, this cannot be real. You just see them running out, and then they're around the corner, and you see like surveillance footage from some surveillance camera over the highway, and they're just running across the highway. And people too, I just seem to be, I don't know if they called that in or what, but I think people have seen it all at this point, because there was another story. I don't know if he's the guy that went in and shot up a gym. Obviously tragic. The gun jammed. He killed one employee there, but then the gun jammed. He ran out. Cops took him out. But I saw the surveillance footage of that. And this guy saunters into a gym with a rifle, and someone's walking out right by him. This guy doesn't even flinch. He walks out like it's just another stroll at the office, as a man walks right by him with a rifle, armed and ready to go. And I'm just like, I think people have seen it all. I think they're
after
just
COVID, we've all been done in. After COVID, there's nothing left. There are presidents who have allegedly been not coherent for half their presidency. There are all sorts of things going on,
right?
And we're all just what here for it, I guess.
We're just immune. We're walking down the show. That guy's got a bazooka. To each their own, I guess. And you just let it go.
Living his best life.
Living his best life now. It's crazy times out there in the world. So. We'll move on, though, at this point and get to our focus story here, as this is an important one, too. A Christian summer camp in Colorado is suing over a gender policy that it says could shut it down. Tell me about what's going on here.
Yeah, this is really kind of wild. It's a crazy story. It's Camp Idrahaje. I'm probably not pronouncing that right, but let me tell you what it stands for. It stands for I'd Rather Have Jesus. It's sort of a name that's derived from that song. But this is a long-standing camp that has been, I guess, in operation since 1948. They host thousands of children in their week-long program every summer, and they're planning to do that this year like they always do, but there is a problem. This camp is asking a court to allow it to follow its sincerely held religious beliefs, and those beliefs would allow it to separate campers, just like they always have, by sex and not gender identity. But what has happened is there has been a shift in the law in Colorado. And by the way, I should mention this camp has reportedly been, we assume, in good standing, but it's been licensed in Colorado to be a summer camp since 1995. And so again, it goes back decades and they host a lot of children. But because there were state regulations that changed the way that gender is governed, the camp has basically said, look, we're not going to operate under those new parameters, letting kids be classified for use of bathrooms and housing and all of that based on gender identity. We're going to do it based on biology and sex. And so because they're not going to comport with what the state is saying, they need to do, they claim the state could come in and shut them down, which is pretty alarming.
And how is the Alliance Defending Freedom involved in this case?
Okay, so Alliance Defending Freedom, this is a conservative legal firm. I think most of our listeners probably know who they are. They've been involved in major Supreme Court cases and victories for religious liberty. They filed a lawsuit May 12th on behalf of the camp, and basically taking aim at the Colorado Department of Early Childhood. That's the department that is overseeing the camps, taking aim over these regulations, these mandates that licensees allow children, again, to use the restrooms in the facilities that they choose to use based on gender identity and not sex. And so they filed that lawsuit in the U.S. District Court for the District of Colorado on behalf of the camp, really asking that they get an exemption. Apparently, by the way, this camp had requested a religious exemption and was not given one. So they'd already taken other action before this lawsuit to try to say, hey, we're a Christian camp, allow us to do that. They reportedly were not granted that ability. And so they are taking this legal action through the Alliance Defending Freedom. And really, according to the ADF, they're saying that by forcing them into this decision, the camp has to, quote, choose between upholding its beliefs about biological sex and risk losing its license or abandoning its beliefs and mission to minister to children. And so ADF has basically said that the government does not have a right to threaten, to shut down, or punish a Christian camp for exercising its religious beliefs about human sexuality.
So you mentioned the Colorado Department of Early Childhood there. How are they responding to this?
So they apparently had put out a statement to CBS News. Lisa Roy, who's the executive director there. This is an interesting statement. I'm going to read it and you make with it what you will. The department will continue working in partnership with faith-based providers and camps within the confines of the law to ensure maximum participation. As I'm sure you understand, cannot comment on active litigation. I just want to point you to the fact that it says that they'll continue to work with faith-based providers within the confines of the law. I thought that was interesting wording.
Yeah, it really is. And remember, this is the same state, Colorado, that had the misgendering whole kerfuffle there about, you making it a law to potentially misgender someone. So this is what you're dealing with out in Colorado. And these gender policies, you just wonder if there's going to be some backlash over these eventually, because this is essentially the push right now, guys. They're trying to codify this stuff and into law and make it so you will be punished if you don't toe the line, and they'll pick and choose when they want to go after somebody on this front. And so it really feels like a blunt force object that they're trying to use here through these gender policies.
Yeah, it's similar to everything that's been happening now for years, right? On the federal level, that's why we have this oversight committee in the Trump administration that's looking into these things. Obviously, this is a state issue. This one has not yet reached the level of a federal issue, but it'll be interesting to see what is the blowback as this is continued to being reported on, and then also this very well could end up being a national issue, right? It could end up in federal courts at some point, and at that point, the Trump administration could certainly weigh in on their perspective on it.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on this one, Billy?
Yeah, I think, look, at the end of the day, if institutions are going to retain their religious liberty, they're going to have to fight back, and that may mean taking legal action. I think what's interesting is they tried other avenues and weren't successful. And so, according to what they've said, this idea that people are going to have religious liberty within the confines of the law, well, the law allows religious liberty. So you're violating the law by not allowing people to have that, federal law, in fact. And so I think the point is people are just going to have to stand up to secure these wins and victories that should just be second nature, basic things, unfortunately.
Yeah. And when I say they're trying to codify these things, exactly what you're saying there right now, religious freedom is the law, but they're trying to say, no, the law should be this, where you can't misgender people. You can't go against these gender policies. You can't have, men, if they want to go into the women's bathroom, can't deny them. They're trying to make that the law and then get religious freedom kind of booted out to the side. So like you said, these are the times that Christians have to stand up, because if we just stay silent on these things and allow these laws to get into place, it's going to be too late to speak out. It's going to be a very difficult battle once these things are codified into law, and it's a much bigger uphill battle to fight after that. So appreciate you putting that one on our radar today, Billy. And we're going to go to the main thing now. And Sharik Khan has built a social media presence around the fact that he left Islam to follow Jesus. CBN's Raj Nair spoke with him about his incredible testimony at Conversations Today's Main Thing.
Why did you leave Islam?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, if you had met me 5 years ago, you would have never guessed what I was about to do. And leaving Islam was by far the hardest thing I'd ever done in my entire life. And I want to paint just a little background here. We grew up as New York Muslims. My father was actually working on Wall Street when the second plane hit the Twin Towers on 9/11. And so we were told as young kids that we need to be the Western light of Islam, like great grades, amazing performance, be so peaceful and respectful, because we had to show the Western world that this isn't what Islam's about. It's not jihad. It's us being excellent people of God. And so this would breed this performance culture in my life all through my elementary, middle school, high school, going into my college years. But as I slowly started coming to my own senses, and I realized that I had adopted a religion that was really just imparted into me when I was 3 years old, I started to question things. And I thought in my head, truly, if Islam is the truth, then it should be able to answer any questions I have. Easily, without a doubt. And so that was a level of honesty and integrity that I had. And so, of course, I would expect it out of my creator and my religion. And so slowly, as I was getting into college, I slowly had these seeds of doubt planted in my head with Islam, to the point where I would actually start doubling down on Islam. I was actually known as a sport debater on my campus. I would talk to all my Christian friends, all of my fraternity brothers, and I would be the guy that was like, dude, I know more about the Injil and Jesus than you do. I know more about your faith than you do. I follow Jesus more than you do. I pray like him. I respect like him. I love like him. But it got to a point where I was almost affirmed. And I kind of had a long encounter with the lukewarm Christian church, because those arguments were standing. They were winning. And so I thought, man, Islam is the way and the truth, right? Until I met what I call a 1 Peter 3:15 Christian, which was somebody who was not afraid to defend their hope in their heart, but to do so with love and grace and mercy. And that was my fraternity vice president. And so I get to college and I'm being this high performing Muslim man. I become a fraternity president. And so I'm a leader. I'm a fisher of men, as you know, in that sense, at least. And my fraternity vice president sits with me and he's like, hey, I want to talk to you about your faith. And I was like, dude, I would love to. And so I had this agreement with him that he was a Christian, but he was the first real Christian I saw. And he was somebody who had the fruit of the Spirit, who was walking with Jesus every step. He had this peace and this delight and this joy that I didn't have. And I was like, dude, this guy, it didn't even feel Christian, honestly. It felt otherworldly. And so I had this agreement with him. We would go to a Whataburger, which is a restaurant, you know, down here in the South. And if I could convince him if I could convince him of my faith, he would become Muslim. And if he could convince me of his faith, I would become Christian. And over this next year of discipleship and chicken fingers and ranch dressing, he actually was reading the gospel to me. And he wasn't a pastor. He wasn't a theologian. He wasn't somebody who was so well equipped to answer every single objection. He just had the true love of Jesus inside of him. And when I saw that and I met that, and he wrestled with me for a whole year, I was asking deep questions. I was talking to him about my fear of leaving Islam. He was the first one who had shown me what Christianity actually was.
Wow.
And so through him, through my fraternity vice president, with him wrestling with my identity and my panic attacks and my fear, he was the one who showed me what it was like to be a follower of Jesus. And by experiencing that love through him, it gave me the confidence to do something that not a lot of Muslim people do, which is to read the Bible without an agenda, without an argument, without waiting for something to fall through, but to read it openly and honestly, because I wanted to know what this guy believed in. And when I saw that power in him, and I read the Bible now because of him, I didn't see contradictions. I saw prophecy, and I didn't see corruption as I had been trained to say. I saw the entire Old Testament, like Daniel 7 and Micah and all these prophets and Moses pointing to Jesus like the Psalms did. And I was like,
giving me goosebumps, brother.
Yeah, I had goosebumps reading it. I was like, man, like, what is going on here? And so I quickly went back and I'm like supersetting like the gym. I have the Quran in one hand, I got the Bible in the other. And I'm like, what is the Quran saying about Jesus? Like, I see that it's referencing him as the sinless, the one to judge, the virgin birth. And I'm seeing it in the Bible. And I'm like, I had this limiting belief cracked that just shattered my world. It was like, I was looking at the Bible with so much more criticism than I was my own Quran. And when I had that humbling moment and I kind of put them side to side, to be honest, the Quran failed in a lot of ways.
Wow.
And I realized that, you know, I prided myself on being a man of integrity. Integrity being my word means something and I do the things that I would in public and private. And I have this level of self-respect for myself. I'm consistent. And I wasn't consistent for the last 20 something years of my life. And that shattered me, everything I believed in.
I think that's one of the things you've really posted about on your social media. And I applaud you for your honesty, your transparency, your raw authenticity. But in your social media, you basically talk about how one night it kind of all came to a head and you were about to end your life. Can you tell us about that night?
I absolutely can. So this was a time where I had left Islam, like my belief in it had been shattered, but I hadn't let Jesus heal me yet. Like I hadn't let Jesus into my life. I believed in Jesus and I wore a cross around my neck, but not once had I thought for a second, oh, I wanted to walk with Jesus. There was no relationship. It was a repackaging of religion. And so I remember this night so vividly. It was November 1st, 2022. It was 1 a.m. and I had just come home to my high school bedroom. I had to move out of my apartment because I was in performance mode. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to be a businessman. I had quit my full-time job to pursue my higher purpose of business, which, you know, later on was an infatuation. And I had ended up in 40K of debt. I had a horrible relationship with my family because my family at this point had thought that I was just screwing up. And so they pretty much disowned me for becoming Christian. They did not agree with it. It was very aggressive. My mom would cry whenever she saw the Christian cross. My dad, you know, he's a physical guy. He grew up in Pakistan, very rough. So, you know, physical abuse was a thing in our family. So he almost swung at me. I almost caught that hand off of him. I was like, chill out, dude. I work out now. We've healed from that a lot, thank God. But in that moment, I had no more friends. I didn't have an identity. I had $40,000 of debt. I had the banks calling me from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. trying to collect. And truthfully, I didn't have any love in my life. And the pain that I was going through was louder than the hope I had in my heart.
Wow.
And so what I did was I threw up a prayer. I remember texting this on my iPhone notes. I said, "Dear Allah, I can't do this anymore. Why is my head failing on me? I want to quit. I just can't do this anymore. Just please, please help." And I lock my phone and I pass out. And the next day, I truthfully thought I wasn't going to live anymore. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to find a way out. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I'm going to just get one last night of rest and see what happens. The next morning, I shoot out of bed and my sleep schedule is destroyed. And for some reason, I'm up and I'm awake and the colors are brighter. And for some reason, there was this feeling of deep grace and love over my life. And I heard this word, and I don't know if it was in my dream the day before or if it was that morning, but I heard, "Get up and go." Like, you are healed. Get up and go. And when I looked that up in the Bible, not the Quran, the Bible, Jesus's words to the man that he healed was, "You are healed. Like, you are mine. Get up and go."
Bro, I'm good. Every 2 minutes you start talking, I'm actually getting chills. This is amazing.
Dude, I mean, this is the raw testimony. Like, this is what lit me on fire. Like, the apologetics and the research and the information overload, that was great. It helped me believe, but this is what I turn back to when I'm like, God, what is my purpose? He showed me in that moment that I'm his.
All right, Raj, appreciate that conversation there. If you want to check out the full conversation, check out CBN News, our YouTube channel. Full conversation is up there. All right, that's going to leave us with time on the podcast today for one last thing.
1 John 3:18, dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. And that's just a good reminder. Actions and truth matter most.
Good reminder, as Christians, we need to put our money where our mouth is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, and do it in truth. All right. That's going to do it for this edition of the Quick Start Podcast. Make sure you're getting on over to cbnnews.com, faithwire.com. Make it a daily stop. We'd appreciate it, and I think you will too. Lord willing, that creek don't rise up on us. We'll be back here tomorrow with more. Till then, God bless. Enjoy the rest of your day.